Hey guys, what's up? Julian here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make Repopulate Mars style tech house, sort of in that Michael Bibi, Lee Foss sort of vibe. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's dive in. So first thing we got going on here is this lead. So as you can hear, this lead is really simple. It just plays 4 notes, and actually all 4 of those notes are the same note. You can see it's just B. There is an A sharp in there somewhere in this part of the MIDI because I was playing with that, but you can see what you actually hear is just 1 note across 2 different octaves, so it's really simple. And this is just following what the bass line is doing actually, because the bass line here is playing that, and you know, the bass is really kind of the melody in this style of music if you think about it, because this lead really just sort of serves to be like a quick sort of effect, like adding some background stuff to fill out the track. But the bass line is really the main thing, and that's really the case in a lot of these tracks, so that's the idea. This is just following that. For the sound, it's just made with analog. What this is just it's a square wave and a saw wave. You can see on the square wave we have some pulse width modulation. I have the LFO on there, so I'll solo it. And yeah, if I turn off that LFO, you can hear it has a lot less like character, you know. This really adds a lot of cool texture to the sound. And then not just going through the unison, we have this reverb which is being automated as well. So the idea here with this is that, like, you know, if you just have like a long reverb on this, you can maybe make that work. But you really want this to be a bit more rhythmic and kind of like pumping with the tracks. So if you just sort of automate it to like quickly go up and then go away, and then you get like, and then it just disappears right there, so it's really quick and snappy. And kind of interacting with what's happening with the beat, you know, it can make it a bit more interesting, and I've heard this in a lot of these tracks, and we can even like turn that high cut off. And it just gives it a more interesting texture, because I think if you just had it without the reverb, you know, that might be a little bit flat. Then we just have some saturation to kind of beef it up a bit. And then we just have a compressor sidechaining it to the kick. And that's the lead. And then we have this vocal atmosphere. So the way that this is made is, I just used this sample here. But the way that I created the sample is basically, you just take a vocal, like, you want kind of like a phrase. So I'll take this one. This isn't the same one that I used for that sample that you're hearing. I can't remember. I made that a long time ago. But basically what you can do is if we just like reverse this, I'll pitch it up a little bit. See how we get kind of like a phrase there? That's what you want, because what's going to happen is that's going to go into, we're going to put it into a ton of reverb and echo. And then that's what's going to create like sort of a pad out of that, because you're going to get those notes just ringing out. Same way as if you just played chords like on a pad. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a ton of echo. I'm going to just turn that up. Maybe I'll turn that down a little bit to like there. And we'll turn the ping pong up. I usually turn the stereo down because, like, you know, with club tracks and techno and house and all that, you want to keep it like pretty mono compatible. But then we'll just turn up that reverb. And then you get this. I'll even turn that up more. So then you get that, and you can hear that gives you something that's going to be in a particular key, whatever key the vocal's in. And you know that you can tune it to your track, and it's just going to be this cool kind of like textured vocal atmosphere sample. So then all you have to do is just freeze this and flatten it. And then what happens is you get, so that little thing I just deleted is essentially like the original sample. And then this is just all of that tail. Of reverb, we can unwarp it. And now you just like reverse that. And you can chop it up even too, like you could get like And you can create these really cool little textured sort of background atmosphere loops. And so that's how I made that one. It's just that. And this goes well in the background because without this, you know, you get the lead, but you don't really have anything other than the bass line that's like kind of musical. You know, it's all a lot of just percussion. And this also adds some energy to the track because it's kind of like pumping. You can see it's going through some reverb. I have a bit of auto pan as well. So we just have the phase on 0. And then this is doing that sort of like, you know, it's almost like how people use plugins like LFO Tool and Volume Shaper. It's just making it so it's like that with the volume. So it sounds like it's being sidechained. But then the idea here is like, maybe if you had the break of your track like this. This way, even without the kick, if it was sidechained to the kick, it wouldn't be still pulsing here. This way, you still get that kind of like pumping, and it keeps the energy even if you don't have the kick playing. So that's the idea behind that. And then we just have some drum bus. And yeah, then we have the hi-hats. So as you can hear, the hi-hats are really simple. Like if you listen to this track, the main one that you really focus on is just like. But as you can hear, there's a lot of little background stuff. I mean, I would say this is a lot of like, considering that there's 4 layers of just background hi-hats, that's a lot based on what you would think from just hearing the track. And you can hear there's a lot of different stuff too. Like there's this shaker, which kind of like builds up because you get on that last quarter note of every bar. You know, that adds a lot of energy when you just have like a constant in your track. And so to have that just for that one quarter note kind of like adds energy and then it drops it again in a very subtle way. But this is the little subtext that's making a big difference in the groove. Same deal with like this, you know, it just gives you a little blast of like some high end over top of the hi-hat there, so it's a little bit stronger. It's kind of interacting with the clap too because it's like. Then we have like just these two, which are just kind of like background. These are very small sounds, but they make a big difference in the beat. Because you're trying to build sort of like a bed of little like background sounds like this, without having too many layers. And then on the hi-hat bus, we just have a bit of saturation. So the idea here, as you can see, it's not much. It's just 6 dB of saturation from the default Ableton saturator on analog clip. You know, if you have good sounds, like these are already strong sounds. This is already just like a pretty fat hi-hat. You're not going to need too much processing because it's already just going to be really strong in the track. But what the processing can do is kind of like just give everything a little bit more punch and fatness and kind of tie it all together in the track and make all the hi-hats work together. Then we have our percussion. And same deal here, we have sort of like the main one, this clap snare. So this is a clap that I layered with a snare, that's why it's called a clap snare. But what's happening here is this is kind of like the best of both worlds. You get the like punch of the snare, so that kind of like mid-range, and also like the crackiness from the snare too. And then you also get the crackiness from the clap, like that like kind of sound. And it's just really full and punchy. And that's the thing, you can't just get like a, you know, blank 808 clap. Like you need something with a little bit more punch and like fullness to it. It needs to be a little bit larger than life. And then we just have like this background percussion, you know, like this one which is pitching here. We have this one which is kind of interesting because you can hear it plays into the clap. It's like a little reverse sound. Like that on the clap, and then just like this little background clap. And each one of these is important, you know, if you get rid of any one of them, it's gonna take something important away from the groove. Like if you get rid of this clap, this background one, it doesn't seem like the biggest deal, but if you get rid of it, a lot of energy is lost. Because just having a clap go in the background makes a big difference. And then on the group, again, same deal here as with the hi-hats. You know, these are already strong samples, like the clap snare, like I said, is very fat. These are all fat percussion, so you don't really need too much. Just something to kind of tie it all together, give it a more even texture. And yeah, then we have the low end, which is the kick and bass. So you can hear the kick here. It's that similar kind of 909 style kick. I've covered it a ton on here, you know, just like very fat and very sort of like boomy in a way, you know. It's not just like a little like, you know, it's very like big. And you wouldn't think that even always hearing the tracks. Like a lot of times when you hear these type of tracks, you might think they're using smaller kicks, but you'd be surprised. These kicks are very similar to techno kicks actually in how big they are. It's just the way it's mixed and the way it fits into the track. So there's something to be learned from that. And you can hear this one's just, you know, very big and boomy. And it also has a lot of punch, too. Like, if you look at it, you know, it's got a pretty strong transient. This almost kind of looks like the transient on a techno kick as well, where it kind of, like, ramps up like that. And then it's going to do some drum bus, which helps. And then we have the bass line. So like I said, the bass line really is kind of the lead here, and you can see the bass line's really simple. It's just 3 notes, 2 of which are actually just octaves of the same notes. It's really just 2 notes, just B and D. D being the minor third of B. This is in B minor. You usually want to write these kind of bass lines in a minor key. Like, even if it's just going to be 2 notes, again, like, root note and minor third works really well to just establish that kind of, like, proper atmosphere, I think. I think if you tried to write this in a major key, it just wouldn't feel right. And that's actually a big critique I have of a lot of tracks people sending. Like, when I hear a lot of tech house tracks from people who are still learning, they, like, you know, they try to write the bass line in a major key, and it just kind of feels weird. I think dance music really needs to be written in a minor key, unless it's, like, some pop EDM stuff or whatever. But yeah, so really simple bass line. And it just has like little variations in it that make the difference. Like, that's very different from that. And then for the sound here, it's 2 layers. So we have this one. This one's sort of the main bass, you know, it's kind of the sub, and it's also got a bit of mid-range in it. And then we have this one, which is just adding some nice mid-range, and it's also adding some movement, which we'll talk about when we get to that. So for this first one, it's just a saw wave and a square wave. The square wave's an octave down. Here's what that sounds like. You can see the amp envelope's just real flat. So just like a real simple, fat sound. And then what's happening here is we have this actually going into a bandpass filter. Usually, you wouldn't use a bandpass filter for a sub bass, because like if you put it up here, it gets rid of all the sub. But if you put it down low and it's on like the 12 setting, so it's a broader sweep, it works really well, because what's happening is you're just kind of like focusing in on these like deeper sub frequencies, but then it's letting through a little bit of low mid-range and mid-range, and that's what you want, is sort of like that little bit of like dull mid-range in there. That's kind of what that second layer adds, is like, you know, just like subtle mid-range. I'd say the sound, it should be like, in terms of the weight of like the different frequency ranges, it should be like 80% low end and 20% mid-range, just to kind of give it something that you can hear and make it a bit fatter too. The mid-range and the low mids add a lot of fatness. So yeah, I've got that resonance up. That really helps with this as well. And that's really all there is to that. It's just a fat sound. Then we have this one. So this is just like a simple respace, 2 saw waves, detuned, and then it's going into a low pass filter. And the low pass filter is just set there, so it's letting through a bit of mid-range. But you can hear the cool thing with this one, I also have the resonance up, so that really helps with that mid-range too. Like if you turn that down, that mid-range goes away. The thing with this one is really that it's adding like some nice movement. Because when you detune these 2 saw waves, that's what you get. You get like, you're kind of like, because of the phasing that's happening with the waveforms. And yeah, it's a nice layer of detail. You know, if you're making a really simple bass line like this, you have to think of like, what are the layers of detail that you can add to kind of like bring it to life. And this is one of them. And then I just have that being high pass because you don't want it to really clash with that main bass. And those are just going through some drum busts here, you know, just set on the medium setting, kind of like really gluing these together and also making this bass fast. When I was referencing this, I was noticing like you really got to take your time because the bass line is a big deal in this track. So if you don't have the proper fatness, like that's kind of why I had that second layer. It's like I had started with the first one and it just wasn't stacking up because you really needed that fatness like in the low mid range to really just kind of like give it the fullness that it needs. You really need to take your time and like just kind of check with other tracks and make sure that you have it on the right level. So that's what this drum bus helps with. The EQ8 also helps with that because this is kind of focusing, you know, you want a lot of low end, so I just boosted that a ton. It's kind of like more of a sound design EQ than sort of like a mixing EQ. If this was, I guess, like strictly mixing, I wouldn't boost this so much, but it works for what it's doing. And then I'm cutting at 100 hertz because that's typically where the kick is boosted, but also just kind of like where it hits the most. You know, the idea is that the kick is going to hit around 100 hertz, and then you're going to have below that the bass line, and also kind of like a little bit of blending. But then we just have that being sidechained to the kick. And then on the group of low end, you can see just a bit of saturation. Same deal as with everything else, you know, the bussing is very important. If you don't do that, like, the overall difference in the track is going to be pretty strong. You know, this whole track, if I didn't have any of these buses, would sound vastly different. It wouldn't be as strong. It wouldn't sound like the tracks that you hear. So, this stuff is important, but you want to set it up so that you don't have to do too much. Like, if you already have a good kick and bass that are just really fat, this is just going to be the icing on the cake. Here's without it. And with it, again, really subtle. But just a little bit goes a long way. And what it really does is it's kind of like gluing them together in a way that you wouldn't get, even if it was like kind of similar to the dry signal, you wouldn't get that glue between them. That's really the difference there that helps. It's kind of filling in harmonic space between them. Like I was saying, they're in different frequency ranges. So this kind of adds different harmonics to them, because that's what saturation is doing. It's just adding harmonics on top of each sound. And yeah, it really brings the kick and bass to life. So that was going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. It's a great way to support me if you guys enjoyed this video and you just want to get some great samples. Definitely go grab that. It's only $5 and you get a very professional sounding template in my opinion. And yeah, thank you so much everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.